He's the writer and director of some of the biggest and most critically acclaimed video games of all time. Grand Theft Auto 3, 4, 5, Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2, and Bully. Dan Houser.
I went and sat in the room all day, every day, and just sat there and stared at the computer and tried to think about, how can I do this that it doesn't sound ridiculous?
In the world of gaming legends, names like Todd Howard or Hideo Kojima stand out as the visible faces of their empires. But Dan Houser was always different. He was the industry's great ghost, an elusive architect who shaped every single Rockstar game while remaining intentionally out of frame. In early 2011, Dan began chatting with Rockstar about what Red Dead Redemption 2 would look like and who the characters would be. By fall of 2012, Dan and the teams at Rockstar had completed a rough script of just the game's main story, which was around 2,000 pages long. With side missions and additional dialogue, bringing the game's script to life meant over 6 years of motion capture, over 1,200 actors, and becoming the single largest employer of actors in New York City. But absolute perfection in storytelling doesn't come without a cost. During development, a Vulture publication with Dan Houser revealed that the studio were working 100-hour work weeks multiple times in 2018. After intense pressure and exhaustion, Dan Houser would depart Rockstar, citing professional burnout as the primary reason for his resignation. What started out as an introspective of himself through Arthur Morgan, a man grappling with his own mortality and the end of an era, ended up mirroring Dan's career at Rockstar. Dan's final years were defined by the realization that the high-pressure perfectionist culture he helped build was no longer sustainable. In seeking to create the ultimate story about a man's end, Houser unintentionally scripted his own. This is the story of Red Dead Redemption 2's development cycle and the human cost of creating a masterpiece. But before we start,
I'd like to highlight one game.
this game is a massive RPG adventure, and they've decided to start the new year off with a bang. If you've never tried this game before, but have heard a lot about it, now's your best opportunity to dive in. The team behind the game made it easier than ever because they're giving away a free legendary character to all new players via my link, the Ultimate Death Knight. The Ultimate Death Knight is the best starter champion because he automatically absorbs all incoming single target damage while sustaining himself and the entire team through passive heals and constant enemy disruption. The graphics are surprisingly great on my phone. If you haven't started playing, what are you waiting for? Click my custom link in the description or scan my QR code right now to get amazing bonuses only available through me. You'll instantly unlock a huge starter pack with Epic Drake. Reach level 15 to get another epic, Knight Errant, and new players can pick one of these 6 promo codes for a free legendary champion. I recommend going with the code UDKING to claim the Ultimate Death Knight because he's an absolute game changer who will carry your team in both PvE and PvP. But there's no bad choices here. Remember, you must download using my link or QR code and then use your promo code in-game. These packages are only available for a limited time, so go download Raid Shadow Legends now. And again, a huge thank you to Raid for sponsoring this video. The beginning of development on Red Dead 2 started with a simple idea back in 2012. Dan Houser's primary goal from the beginning was to explore the breakdown of a family. While the first game focused on protecting family at all costs, the sequel aimed to detail why that family fell apart. While Grand Theft Auto 5, which was released in 2013, was being polished, Red Dead Redemption 2 was in pre-production. By the end of 2012, Dan Houser and his narrative team had completed rough scripts for the game. At the same time, Grand Theft Auto V's first DLC featuring Trevor was halfway through production. However, in a move that would change the trajectory of Rockstar Games, that project was ultimately shelved.
I want a taste of the other side of the brick.
Now you heard what your boy said, you're leaving.
Give me the back!
Dan Houser revealed that if they had chosen to finish and release that DLC, they wouldn't have had the bandwidth to make Red Dead Redemption 2. When GTA 5 released in 2013, Red Dead Redemption 2 was already shifting out of pre-production. By the time the GTA 5 team was freed up, the Red Dead 2 project moved into the stressful main production phase that Houser described as often falling behind schedule and going significantly over budget. During development, Houser binged on Victorian literature. He famously listened to the audiobook of George Eliot's Middlemarch while walking to and from the Rockstar offices every single day. Houser recalled that in the early versions of the script, Arthur Morgan was very, very nasty. They realized that for the breakdown of a family to hit home, the player had to feel Arthur's conflict. And that posed a dangerous question for Rockstar. How do you turn a very, very nasty outlaw into someone players would mourn alongside hundreds of side stories? The answer would take years, hundreds of rewrites, and push the studio to its absolute limits. To support this level of detail, Rockstar leaned heavily into systems that had never been pushed this far before. NPCs followed daily routines, wildlife interacted with the environment dynamically, and camps evolved over time. Dialogue had to account for player actions that might not even happen for hours or happen at all. Every feature multiplied the amount of testing required. And by the mid-2010s, Red Dead Redemption 2 had grown into one of the largest and most complex projects in Rockstar's history. Teams were spread across multiple studios, often working on the same systems from different angles. Coordination became as important as creativity, and delays in one area could stop progress across dozens of others. As deadlines slipped, the workload intensified. Rockstar leadership described the process as a necessary push to achieve a singular vision, but internally, the strain was already starting. Long hours became normalized. Late-stage changes collided with already packed schedules, and the sheer size of the game made finishing feel incredibly abstract. This wasn't a game that could be polished quickly, because every fix risked breaking something else. What made the situation especially difficult was that many of the game's most celebrated features, its slow pacing, its environmental detail, and its reactive world, were also the most expensive to build and maintain. The very things that made Red Dead Redemption 2 feel alive were the same things extending development. By the time the project entered its final stretch, the team wasn't just racing toward release. They were managing the consequences of years of accumulated ambition. When it finally did release, it stood as a technical and creative achievement few studios could rival, but it also raised uncomfortable questions about sustainability, about how much work a game of this scale demands, and ultimately, who bears the cost of that. Because Red Dead Redemption 2 didn't just define what an open world game could be, it redefined what it took to make one.
They've got this game, Red Dead Redemption. That game brought in $725 million in sales in just the first weekend.
When Red Dead Redemption 2 finally hit shelves in October 2018, it was hailed as a monumental achievement. But the victory lap was shadowed by a growing controversy that struck at the heart of the Houser brothers' relationship. For decades, Dan and Sam Houser had operated as the twin engines of Rockstar Games. Sam was the visionary producer and president, while Dan was the narrative architect, where he wrote soul-searching scripts that gave the games their bite. Together, they had built a culture of perfection at any cost, but with Red Dead 2, that cost became public. In a now famous interview leading up to the launch, Dan Houser boasted that the team had been working 100-hour weeks to finish the game. While he intended it as a testament to their dedication, it sparked a global firestorm. For the first time, the Rockstar way, a methodology defined by the brothers' relentless pursuit of detail and late-stage creative pivots, was being scrutinized not as a secret to success, but as a recipe for human exhaustion. The game itself mirrored Dan's own reality. Just as Arthur Morgan was a man trying to hold on to a crumbling gang together under the weight of a challenging world, Dan was managing a spiraling empire of thousands of developers across multiple continents. The intimacy of their earlier days at Rockstar had been replaced by a massive grinding machine. As the acolytes poured in, a rift seemed to form between the work and the creator. Dan had spent nearly 20 years as the primary voice of Rockstar's worlds, but Red Dead 2 felt like a final breath for him. It was a game about the end of an era, and as it turned out, it was the end of his. In early 2019, shortly after the game's release, Dan Houser took an extended leave of absence, while Sam remained at the helm to steer Rockstar into the future of GTA Online. The partnership that had defined modern gaming was effectively over. In February 2020, it was made official. Dan Houser was leaving the company he and his brother had founded in 1998. His departure signaled a big shift. For the first time in the company's history, the Houser brothers were no longer a duo. Dan's exit wasn't just a resignation. It was a surrender to the burnout caused by the very masterpiece he had bled for. He had spent years writing about outlaws who couldn't escape their pasts, and in the end, he found himself needing to escape the legacy he and Sam had built together. For Dan Houser, it was the end of a chapter defined by scale, pressure, and control. Whatever comes next for Rockstar, it will be shaped by the lessons Red Dead Redemption 2 left behind.
Gaming. Because we're going so fast, so quickly, where can it go? Because AI's now joined the party. Where can it go?
It can go, you know, with all things, it can either go somewhere really interesting or somewhere that gets overly focused on making money.
Which do you think will win out? Money?
I think they'll both win.
Okay.
I think there'll be two paths. I've already seen that in spaces in the games industry where they both kind of win.
For 2 decades, the Houser name was the gold standard of gaming, a brand built on bravado and uncompromising vision. But Red Dead 2 changed the internal math of the studio. While Sam Houser saw the game as a technical peak, Dan Houser treated it like a final confession. His writing had evolved from the biting satire of Grand Theft Auto to the existential dread of Arthur Morgan. He spent 8 years documenting a man realizing his old way was terminal. In a tragic irony, Dan reached the same conclusion about his own career at Rockstar. When Dan walked away in 2020, he left a partnership. The duo that had been inseparable since the 90s, the producer and the poet, were severed. Today, Dan's new firm, Absurd Ventures, feels like a direct response to the 100-hour weeks of 2018. By focusing on smaller teams and diverse media, he's seeking creative autonomy without the industrial scale. He's no longer building the largest worlds imaginable. He's building one that doesn't require his soul as an entry fee. Their first project is a comic series called American Capier, and if this doesn't give you heavy Rockstar vibes, I don't know what will. Rockstar Games continues under Sam's solo leadership. The studio is now deep in development on the next Grand Theft Auto, a project carrying the weight of Dan's legacy. Yet, the industry is watching to see if the studio's heart remains intact without its primary narrator. Red Dead Redemption 2 stands as both a monument and a warning. It's a masterpiece of storytelling that exposed the limits of perfectionism. It didn't just chronicle the end of the Outlaws era, it marked the end of the Hauser era as well. Arthur Morgan's final words now feel like Dan's own message to the studio he left behind.
I gave you all I had. I did.
And again, a huge thank you to Raid for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to use the link in the description or scan this QR code to get started today. And as always, thank you, and I'll see you in the next episode.